Well,
47 years. We've never had an argument.
till tonight.
And it's very odd for me to be interviewing him in the fact that I'm usually being the one interviewed. But, it's an amazing relationship in the fact that we still don't have a contract together. We never got around to that. We met.
Very poor management.
Yeah. I find that I'm now managing him. While I'm playing golf, he's doing interviews, which I love. I love that. It's such payback. It's such amazing payback. But Shep has become one of the great managers in the business in the fact that he told me one time this, and it made so much sense to me. He says, you make more money being honest than dishonest. And in our business, that's a very bizarre way of looking at the business, because you can't find anybody that's actually gone through this business without being. I don't think we've ever gone to court with anybody.
Once.
Once,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't there. Yeah. I was playing golf or on tour or something. But the great thing is that we never got into that. If there was somebody that wronged us, we just basically said, okay, we just don't work with them again. Let's build another show. And a very odd relationship. Buddhist Jew. Baptist, American kid, and I don't really think we've ever had an argument about anything.
Yeah, no, it's wild.
And but because it's like it was.
I never tell him anything.
Yeah. If somebody calls the other guy, I go, what? We don't call each other unless something is wrong. So I sometimes don't hear from Shep for 2 years at a time because everything just seems to go well.
Yeah. So it's wild.
Yeah, it really is.
And he doesn't have a phone, by the way.
Yeah, I don't carry a phone, so I'm one of those. I am not plugged in to any of the systems. You'll never get an email from me, okay? If I want to talk to you, I'll call you. Shep, one of the main things is a little bit of history. If somebody asks us how we met, it's two entirely different stories. And it always surprises me when I read a book by, say, like Keith Richards, and it says, and then Mick said, it's 1964, and he's on heroin, So it should say, and then Mick probably said, or Mick should have said, or could have said. So when we got together, we were living in the basement of the Chambers brothers during the Watts riot. Shep was doing illegal things at the Landmark Hotel.
Pharmaceutical salesman.
Without a license, I think. To Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and everybody there. And at some point, somebody said to Shep, look, Shep, you can't just run around Los Angeles in 1968 with a lot of money, a lot of cash, because the police will know who you are and what you're doing. So you're Jewish, you should be a manager. That's what Jimi Hendrix told him. And he said, I know this band that's living in a basement in Watts right now that needs a management. We got together, and that's how we started right there, But did you ever think it would go this far?
No.
No,
I started it because I needed a front.
Yeah.
I was a pharmaceutical dealer with the greatest clientele. I came to LA and ended up at this motel, and the motel had Jimi Hendrix, the Chambers Brothers, Jim Morrison. For a pharmaceutical salesman, this was the target audience. I thought I had died and gone to heaven. And they made a lot of sense. They said, you got to have a front. You got to have a profession. And you're Jewish, you should be a manager. So they go to Alice and tell them, we found a Jew that'll manage you.
And my parents went, oh no.
His parents actually drove in from Phoenix, was so worried that this was going to happen. And we worked it out. But
Yeah.
remember, they drove in overnight. They were like in a panic.
Yeah.
You're going to have a Jew in your life? Oh my God.
We were very white bread America, And honestly, it was one of those things where we were too young to sign a contract with Frank Zappa. We were all too young. We were all 19
We had to go
years
to
old,
court,
so 20
and the
years
parents
old.
had to sign.
The parents had to sign for the contract, and rather than us. But it was our big break. Now here's how I knew that he was going to be a manager. You have to remember now, we're living on maybe $20 a week for the whole band. This is...
We wish $20.
We wish, yeah.
We wish.
And that's if somebody had a girlfriend that had a job.
Thursday night was rock soup night. You
Yeah.
remember that? You used to take a rock, put it in a pot of water, boil it, and that was our dinner. On Thursday night was rock soup night.
Right, unless somebody had ketchup.
Yeah.
But the thing was like, you know, any amount of money was a lot of money to us. And Shep goes in to meet with Herbie Cohen and Frank Zappa, and he comes out and he goes, well, they offered us $30,000. My jaw hit I never heard of $30,000, you know, and the band just went, that's it. We can retire now. We have $30,000, you know. And he goes, I didn't take it. And it was like, what? He says, I took 3,000. And we're sitting there going, it's the first thing our manager does is we're down $27,000. And he says, Herbie wanted to give you $30,000 for publishing, writing, owning everything. He says, I'm Jewish, he's Jewish. I figure if he wants it to give me $30,000, it's worth $300,000. So I took 3, and he was right.
And we kept the publishing.
But that was his first thing that he said, you know, and we all just sat there and went, okay. It was so weird that we agreed with everything. We didn't agree with anything anybody said about Alice Cooper because we were a unique thing. We didn't listen to producers. We didn't listen to Frank Zappa. We didn't listen to anybody. But for some reason, we listened to Shep. And some reason, we listened to Ezrin, who were the two people that really made Alice Cooper work, you know. And for no reason, we listened to them. But the thing about it was we all grew up at the same time, learning as we went. We didn't know that you couldn't put theater stuff on stage. And at some point, everybody's going to hate it. They were just going to hate it. You climb up so far on a branch that you're either going to be a genius or an idiot. And so we just went, well, where's the branch? You know, we're for that. And Shep was the one that really believed in it. So the thing about it is, though, what even made you believe in it?
I can't say I believed in it when I first saw you. When I first saw the band, it was so out there, and the songs you were doing had like 30 or 40 changes in a minute.
Right.
A typical song was, you know,
Be Beyond Mars.
Today, and I said, I'll never have to work. This is the perfect band to manage. And then we reached the point where I couldn't do what I was doing anymore. We had sort of hit a dead end, and we sat down and we said, let's get really serious. Because did you think it was going to last 45 years?
Oh my gosh, no, in those days, you know.
When we started, it was just sort of.
If you got to 30 years old, it was something, you know.
So this moment came when we said, we have nothing else to do. Let's get serious and make this work.
Yeah.
And that's what led us to Bob Ezrin.
Right.
Because Alice theatrically had a show that was really unique, but there was no way to connect to the audience. The music wasn't something that was connecting. And that was something we felt that we could bring in to help make it commercial. And I remember sitting down and saying, who made the best records that was a band that wasn't the Beatles? You know, there were certain bands that were beyond bands, you know, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. Then there were bands that had hit records that weren't as significant. And the band that we all thought would made the best records, but wasn't the Beatles, was the Guess Who.
They had the best guitar sound. Yeah.
And just great records. Burton Cummings' manager's in here right there. And they were produced by Jack Richardson out of Toronto. So my partner Joey and I went up there to get Jack to produce Alice. unbeknownst to us, that's the last thing he wanted to do in life, was produce Alice. And he had just hired this kid, Bob Ezrin. It was his first day at work. And he said, Bob, go out there in the lobby and get rid of these guys. And Bob had just started working, and I was able to sort of talk him into coming to see you in New York. He fell in love with the band. And he really gave, he made sense out of the music. He put it in a picture frame that people could really understand. And the first record he did was 18.
Love It to Death, yeah.
Yeah. Which really changed the game around and gave us an opportunity to start to do stuff. And Joe Smith is in here, and I want to tell a great Joe Smith story. Joe was the vice president of Warner's. Aloha, Joe and Donnie.
Joe was another guy that believed in us.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
Well, sort of, kind of. We sort of forced him into it. It was a great moment. We wanted to go on tour, but we didn't have any money. So we went to Warner Brothers for tour support, and they said no. And we didn't take no's too well. And I think we had maybe $20 between all of us. And across the street from Warner Brothers was a Taco Bell, Joe. I'm sure you can still smell this. There was a Taco Bell. We took our last $20. We bought stuff, the stinkiest stuff we could find from Taco Bell. We went over to Warner Brothers. We had heard Joe Smith's name. We had never met him, but we knew that he was a guy who could get us a check. He left to go to lunch. We broke into his office, 5 guys with hair down to here, wearing dresses, with Taco Bell all over the place. And he came walking back in from lunch going, what the hell is going on? And I said, could I see you for a second? I took him over in the corner. I said, we're Alice Cooper, the guys you signed. We sort of have the hit record. We're never leaving this office unless you give us $15,000 for tour support. I remember you walked me down to Ed West, who was a controller, and said, give this guy a check so you get him out of my office. And that was really the beginning. That was sort of what got us started. So thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
And I'm very glad you didn't like Taco Bell. So it would have been a whole different ending. But,
well, yeah, you know, as I said, everything we were making it up as we went along. We might have been the only band. Well, Frank Zappa, the reason Frank Zappa heard us play at 7 o'clock in the morning at his house, because he said, be here at 7. I thought he meant 7 in the morning. And we're all in chrome, you know. And like he said, there's like 8 songs that are 2 minutes long with 48 changes in it. And Frank's standing there with his coffee and a cigarette in his robe. And he goes, I don't get it. And I said, is that good? And he goes, oh yeah, the fact that I don't get it, I'll sign you because I don't get it. And, you know, and that was the thing. We actually made Frank Zappa go, what? I said, you're the only guys that could play this music, you know. But at that point then, we had to invent what Alice was going to be. And we all had to kind of agree with it. And the thing that made Alice Cooper work were the mistakes. We made so many mistakes. And realizing that half of them actually worked on stage. Things that you would normally throw out of the show, the audience reacted to. And we went, oh. Okay, well, that works. But there were some major mistakes. Once we had finally made it, you know, then we got cocky because, you know, we were selling out everything and we were, you know, voted #1 band in the world. So we said, well, let's get a cannon then. And Shep, give me a cannon. You know. So Shep gets a cannon made that's the size of the stage.
40
and the
feet
idea
long,
is to shoot Alice across the stage. Because we've already hung me, they cut my head off. They've done everything they could.
It was our first stadium show, Three Rivers Stadium.
Three Rivers Stadium,
Pittsburgh.
and the production said we're going to shoot Alice.
And
out
on the
of
radio,
cannon.
Ed was saying, so what the guys who used to build our props were Warner Brothers Studio.
Yeah.
And when we came up with this idea, I went back to Warner Brothers, who had built the guillotine and a couple of the other things. And there was a older guy. Now I'm the older guy, but in those days he was the older guy with like half glasses sitting at his desk. And I come in and, hey, thanks for the guillotine. It worked really great, but I have something new. See if you can do. And he doesn't even look up and, yeah, I'm glad it worked. I said, you know, we're doing a stadium, and I want to shoot Alice out of a cannon across a baseball stadium. And he's writing, and he goes, what period cannon? And it's like, what period cannon? Oh, yeah,
what do you got?
World War I. So I said, give me your best cannon. And he actually goes to a drawer, and he pulls out these blueprints for a cannon that shoots a guy, the old clown trick. I don't know if you ever saw it at the circus. So the gag is that you go in the barrel, Alice crawls into a false bottom.
And goes out.
Right, goes out, gets in a cart, drives around to where the dummy's going to come. We do some shtick on stage. Cannon goes off, and Alice is triumphant. The spotlight hits him on the other side of the thing. That's in our brains. But we had learned at one of our first fiascos, which was in LA, we decided we were going to get arrested for indecent exposure.
Yeah.
That would really get us some...
Exposure's a good word.
Yeah, that would get us some attention. And we had some clear plastic suits made up, no underwear. Alice went on stage at The Experience, which was a nightclub on Sunset Boulevard, very famous nightclub in its day. I went around to the phone booth, called the police, and said, I can't believe it, I have my children in this club. This is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. There's 5 guys with hair down to their ass, their genitals are hanging out. I can't believe you're allowing this to happen. And I hear a siren coming, and okay, we're going to get arrested. And going to be front page, Alice Cooper, decent. And by the time the police came, the heat of their bodies had
fogged up everything.
So they came in and left. So that night we sat down and we said, which, by the way, was probably the luckiest thing that ever happened to the Alice Cooper band, because we sat down that night, we looked at each other, and we said, we actually can't get arrested. And we got in the car, and we said, we're going to drive to the first city we get a standing ovation.
Which was Detroit.
Which was Detroit, which was probably the luckiest break that happened, because Detroit understood the rock and roll that Alice was doing. It was a time when Iggy and MC5 and Stu, they were all happening.
We were basically a guitar rock band, which we fit right into Detroit. That was we were a Yardbirds band.
So we had learned that you had to rehearse. That moment with the clear plastic clothes taught us, you better rehearse. So now the cannon. So in Pittsburgh, they're saying, watch Alice get shot out of a cannon, watch out.
So how many tickets?
38,000.
38,000
Now
tickets.
we have this truck that's carrying just the cannon. It's 40 feet long, it's 3 tons. We get to Kalamazoo, Michigan, it's the first show. Alice crawls in the cannon. The shtick was that the lights go out, the band all has torches. Neil, the drummer's on a snare drum, and they're going really slow so that Alice can get around to the other side. He's getting around to the other side, but it's far away. Fuse gets lit, big explosion. Spotlight hits Alice over there. There's no reaction from the audience. Alice comes to me and said, what happened? There's no reaction. Well, the dummy only came out about 6 inches.
Dummy comes out and goes.
But the worst thing, it was just unbelievable. So Alice says, what are we going to do? I said, go to sleep, I'll take care of it. Got it covered. Comes to the show the next day, what are we doing? And I said, I got it, it's going to be fantastic. Sweetheart, baby, lamb chop, this is good. And in the hotel, they had fire extinguishers that were foam. You turned them upside down and foam came out of them. So I decided to make it into a giant penis. And I said, Al's going to be a giant penis. You get on it and masturbate it. And this foam's going to go out for like 200 feet. It's going to cover everybody. It's going to be fantastic. So he gets on the cannon. He's working so hard. It's like licking it and doing it. And the foam comes out like 1 inch. We're the only two people in the hall that know what it was supposed to be. Now there's one rehearsal left. We have 38,000 people waiting to see Alice get shot out of a cannon. He says, what are we going to do? I said, I don't know, but I'll figure something out. Shows up the next night and said, well, what are we going to do? I said, well, you may not like this one. Why? What's going to happen? I said, you're probably going to spend the night in the hospital. I have a feeling the cannon may blow up. You're kidding? I said, no, but you'll be okay. And we ended up having a film crew watch it blow up. We sent it to Pittsburgh. And then we got one of the road crew to make a press conference as a doctor, saying that Alice had been hurt, but not hurt so bad. He could do the show, but a couple of the guys would have to be in wheelchairs, and there'd have to be doctors on stage. But he's going to come and do the show, and we did the show. Dennis was in a wheelchair the whole show with blood coming out and nurses coming. And the front page the next day was, the greatest artist in the world. Who else would come from his hospital bed and do the show?
And the kicker is, he sold the Canon to the Rolling Stones.
Oops.
They walked by and said, what's that? And he said, we want to buy it? Yeah, boom, got it. But you know, the idea of when it works once, it probably won't work again. We did a publicity stunt in London where we got banned in London, which was the greatest thing ever.
The greatest thing ever.
The album went right to #1, and we sold out every ticket at Wembley. And it was this Leo Absey and Mary Whitehouse, who were the two MPs.
This was the naked billboard of Alice.
They decided they were going to just ban us for no reason. You know, we don't want our children going to see this. We were going, thank you. You know. So the idea was to take this Avedon shot. Richard Avedon did a shot with me. It was a naked shot, but with a big boa constrictor. And it was really a very nice shot. I mean, it was a really good Avedon shot. We put it on a giant billboard and put it on a lorry with their trucks there, and made sure that it stalled in Piccadilly Square on Friday at rush hour. And it made the front page.
Twice, by the way. They told us the way once, we drove it back and broke it down again.
The thing about it was that the British loved a great Hollywood publicity stunt. They loved the fact that we did it. They weren't necessarily crazy about the traffic jam, but the fact that we pulled it off was what they loved about it. Now, so we're shaking each other's hands. And we are brilliant. We're the producers. We're Max Bialystock and Bloom back there. We got this. Shep says, next time we go in, I got this great idea. It's a giant balloon.
We had a huge balloon made of Alice for the Thanksgiving Day parade, the Macy's parade. The nose was about 40 feet long.
Yeah.
Like all nose.
And makeup and everything. Yeah. We're going to put it on a boat and we're going to stall it in the Thames River.
We had heard that a balloon had gone up about 4 years before, and the Royal, because it was in the air corridors.
Airspace.
Yeah. They came and shot it down. So we rented a suite at the Savoy Hotel.
Right.
The old Charlie Chaplin suite. We invited all the press in, and we sent a barge out. We didn't tell them what we were doing, but we sent a barge out, and feeding them champagne and stuff, and said, "Oh, look out the window." And they're looking out the window, and all of a sudden, this giant Alice head is like blowing up with air, and it's when those balloons are blowing up, they sort of wobble, and it's like, wow, look at that. And we're like acting surprised. Wow, look at that. And then they realize that's why they're there. And this thing's going up, and we're looking at each other like we are the coolest guys in the world. And the balloon gets almost filled up, and it's almost like looks at us.
Yeah.
And goes, and the nose goes right into the water. It never got up. But nobody who was there knew that was the gag. So we ended up getting the front page of the paper anyway with the picture of the nose in the water.
The idea was the fact it was going to blow up. We were going to let it go. It was going to go up. And the Air Force was going to shoot it down. Can you buy that? That's the best thing ever could happen. And the thing just went. But again, that's what that legendary thing is made out of, is the mistakes that happen. That you think Spinal Tap's full of mistakes. Well, Spinal Tap was based on us. And the more moving parts you get, the more things are going to break. The bigger ideas you get, the more they're going to break.
I think one of the big takeaways that I try and tell younger people who do what we do, form a bond and try and get through life, is that being allowed to fail is almost the key to success. In most relationship with an artist and a manager, just taking that canon for a second, most relationships, if that had happened to a normal artist, he would keep the manager up all night calling him you schmuck, you asshole, you're ruining my life. And the guy would not have any time to try and figure out how to do something to make it work. And I think that's really the strength of our relationship, is that we support each other when we fail. That's the important part.
Well, I know how Shep thinks, and as soon as we understood that it failed, I went, so what do we do? It's not like, you idiot, it's well, what do we do?
How do we make it work?
How do we turn this to our advantage?
Yeah.
Let's make sure that everybody knows it failed.
Yeah.
You know, gallantly failed.
We had no problem with
fabulously failed. But then other things did work. I mean, the Welcome to My Nightmare show was a total roll of the dice. And it was one of those things where it was, I've got this much money, you've got that much money, we're gonna put it all into this show, and if it doesn't work, we're dead.
Exactly.
And basically, it was bringing Broadway to rock and roll without watering it down. Taking what's good about Broadway, putting it into a really rock show without softening it, but even making it more intense.
And being able to tell a story.
And you tell the story through the show.
Which hadn't really happened in rock and roll at all. There was it was one song after another. There was nobody doing stories, telling a story. And that's, I think, what made Alice so different from everybody else, and the shows still are a story. There's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end, there's a reason for things happening. A lot of the times the reasons are things that we know that the audience may not even think of, but it gives Alice, as a performer, a place to always be solid on a solid foundation. He knows what Alice should be doing. And it just made, for us, it was an amazing leap of faith that luckily worked, because we'd be still eating rock soup.
Yeah.
If it hadn't.
But I mean, that's it. I can't think of too many things that actually did fail in that show. Everything did work the way it went because we went with the best people. We pulled out a choreographer from West Side Story. We used Disney to build the props. Now we had money. This is dangerous now to give Alice Cooper money.
Dangerous.
Because before, whatever we would find backstage was the props. If it was a broom, well, good. I can make up 20 things out of a broom.
If you saw Alice's early shows, it ended with chicken feathers on the stage. That's because we could call ahead and find hotels that had feather pillows and steal them. And that's where the feathers came from for the show.
That was the prop. In fact, the very famous chicken story, which is tragic for the chicken. It was great for us. But we got there to the show, and Shep had put this gigantic show together for these guys in Toronto. They wanted to do this 60,000 people, Toronto Stadium, the Peace Festival. And it was going to have, Shep got John Lennon and Yoko Ono, he got the Doors, got all these people. We had all the people there, and they said, well, Shep, how much do we owe you? And he says, nothing. But I want Alice to go on between the Doors and John Lennon. That's my payment. And we were fairly unknown at this point. We were notorious. We weren't really a big deal at this point.
They didn't know enough that Peace and Alice didn't quite work together.
Yeah. We were going to sort of ruin the peace part of this, So the Doors go on, and they're great. The Jim Morrison, we're old friends, and that's great. And he's surprised to see me there going, wow, what's Alice doing here? And John Lennon was always a real, promoted us because he loved the idea that we were so crazy artistic. So we went on, did the show, did everything. At the very end of the show, we'd open 2 pillows up and put a CO2 cartridge, and it would fill a stadium. It looked like a snowball.
Fire extinguisher from the hotel, again, the fire.
So everything was stolen.
Yeah.
And put the thing on, and there's feathers everywhere going, and then all of a sudden I look down, and there's a chicken. Now, I didn't bring the chicken. And I'm thinking, the guy in the audience going, I got my keys, I got my tickets, I got my chicken. Go see Alice right now. So I'm trying to figure out where the chicken came from, and I'm from Detroit, never been on a farm in my life, so it was a bird, it had feathers, it had wings, it should fly. It's designed to fly, it's a bird. Chickens don't fly as much as they plummet. So I picked it up in the middle of all this chaos, and I threw it in the audience, expecting it to fly away, caught into some young hippie girl's arms, and I'll name him Alice. And it went, and the audience tore it to pieces. The Peace Festival.
At the Peace Festival.
Threw it back on stage, and there's just blood and feathers everywhere. And I went, okay. Next day in the paper, Alice Cooper kills chicken. The kicker to the story was the first 5 rows were all in wheelchairs. They put all the people in wheelchairs in the front. They were the one that crippled the chicken and threw it back at me. A lot of anger in those wheelchairs down there. And Frank Zappa called up and he goes, Alice, did you kill a chicken last night on stage? And I went, no. And he said, well, don't tell anybody. They love it. You know? And at that point, really? And he says, don't deny anything. Whatever they say, just go with it. And you know, that basically was, there was no internet then. Everything was urban legend. By the time we did anything, the urban legend had gotten to the next city.
Oh my God.
If it was a 2-foot snake, it was a 50-foot snake. And it ate 2 people, you know. So we capitalized on understanding that we were basically the Inquirer. We were not the New York Times. We were going to be the Weekly World News. You know, everything that we would feed the press little things.
We had the ASPCA at every show.
Every show is that.
Every show. This bevy of women would come in who looked like Prohibition, you know, the movies from
Don't kill chicken. We heard that you set a German
snake,
Shepherd
the
on
chicken,
fire.
The German Shepherd, the stories we heard over. City councils would try, and we loved it getting banned, so, you know, we tried.
Yeah, it worked in our favor, the whole thing did. But I still think Shep brought the chicken. He's the only one. You know, if you go through elimination, the only person that would have thought to bring the chicken would have been Shep.
Actually, we're feral chickens backstage. It was an outdoor show, and there were like 4 or 5 feral chickens, and I saw the chicken, and I said, nothing good can come from me throwing this on stage. Let's do it.
So to this day, we still get this. 40, 50 years later, we still get, well, you know, ASCA is outside. You're going to kill chickens tonight.
But Alice's answer at the first press conference was the best answer I remember. We did it maybe 2 weeks after we did a press conference, and everybody was so angry about him killing the chicken. It was like a wolf pack of journalists that this horrible guy, and they said, you killed the chicken. You know, how could you do that? And Alice said, what Alice said was, you know, today I drove in from the airport. I passed 11 Colonel Sanders. Does anybody bother him about killing a chicken?
This guy's killed billions of chickens, just not as well as me.
So that took care of that issue.
I felt sorry for the chicken, but it was not my fault. I just want you to know that.
I think we were going to take some questions from you guys. If you
No
want to ask
math,
some questions.
okay, because neither one of us are good at that.
Okay, I have the microphone. I'll bring it around to anyone who has a question. If you'd raise your hand, I see a
The
gentleman.
guy in the no head, no backstage pass T-shirt. We like that.
That was Shep's favorite line. That was his.
Here, I'll bring the microphone to you. Just hang there.
Could you say a few words about your chef aspect?
What is that? Yeah, no, I was very lucky to have been at about 40 meet a chef named Roger Berger, who sort of brought a lot of joy into my life. And when I would hang out with him, it would be like hanging out with Alice. You go to a city and all the musicians would show up. In this case, all the chefs. So I got to know Wolfgangs and Nobus and realized that none of them were making any money. And to me, they were doing exactly what Alice did. If Alice doesn't do 18 in a show, people go crazy. So you have to do your hits. If Wolfgang doesn't serve pizza, people go crazy. Alice has to write new songs or he loses his credibility and what he does. Same thing with the chef. They have to do new recipes. Alice wears this, gets backstage, puts on his makeup and his costume. A chef goes backstage, puts on his whites. Backstage, you know, he may have an art. You talk to his cooking crew about how to, you know, you put too much pepper in, you put too much salt in. Alice may say, hey, last night you played too many notes on that song. And then they go out to their audience with a smile on their face and do their show. So I realized they were basically living the same lives, performing the same kind of service, making people happy, but they weren't considered artists and they weren't getting paid for it. And I had that skill set from working with artists to know how to monetize them and how to, you know, get them to their audience. So I organized all the chefs into an agency and got the Food Network on the air, and the rest is history. They're all flying in private planes over us right now.
But the thing that really started it, though, I think Shep was at a restaurant in Nice with Roger Verger, and they were getting ready to eat, and the manager came in and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Verger can't eat here."
This was in Monterey.
And he says, "Why not?" He says, "Well, he's the help. He's not allowed to eat here."
Yeah.
And at that point, I think Shep saw red.
Yeah, I went
And
crazy.
went, this guy's a superstar, and you're treating him like he can't eat in the same restaurant as me. And I think that's what actually got him
That was
going.
my
I remember
moment.
he
It was
told
a
me
few
that
years,
that was that moment of just sort of rage, you know, and I'm going to fix this.
Mr. Verger was doing an event at in Northern California. I can't remember the name of the motel now, but it was a motel. It was $2,500 for 2 nights, and spend cooking class with them and have dinner with them. And they sold out. I think it was about 200 people at $2,500 a person.
But he was still considered the cook.
Yeah, and he didn't get paid. And we stayed the next night to go have dinner in the restaurant, and we got this. So he had generated $500,000 for the place. People had come from all over. He didn't get paid. He was in a horrible little room. And when we went to the restaurant, the maitre d' pulled me aside and he said, "I am so sorry, Mr. Gordon. We have a policy that help can't eat in the dining room, but I'll buy Mr. Verger dinner in the bar." And work? You're not paying him. What's your definition of work? Let's get this definition down. You're not paying him. You gave him a shitty room, and now you won't feed him in the dining room. So how does he become an employee? And I just got really mad, and that was the moment where I saw red and just said, you know, this is not going to happen anymore. I think I have the skill set to help these guys.
It went from that to then now coming to the place, showing up, making an appearance for a minimum of $100,000 cash, just to show up. And that didn't happen before this.
Nothing.
I mean, and that was really an impressive thing to organize those chefs who really had no organization at all, and have somebody to champion their whole thing. So, I mean, then all of a sudden you start seeing the chefs on TV and everything like this, and they were rock stars. You know, if you could go to a restaurant and have this guy cook for you, well, wow, that's the biggest thing ever. IBM is going to have a convention. Well, okay, I can get you, you know.
Nobu for $1 million.
That guy. So it was really, and Shep's a foodie. I'm not a foodie, but Shep's a foodie. And, you know, he lives to eat, I eat to live, you know. So, but I really admired that, to take something that didn't exist and create it and make it exist, and it still works, you know.
Very proud of it.
And now a question.
Hi, I have a question for both of you. My first experience with Alice Cooper was actually in front of the television, and it was on The Muppet Show when I was a little child. And I remember, I think you were singing Welcome to My Nightmare, and my mom ran over to the television and said, "This is highly inappropriate and not for children." And we had a huge fight in our house because of this. And I just wonder, was my mom the only hard ass out there? Was there complaints about The Muppet Show and you being on, or was she the only one?
When Shep came to me with the Muppets, I told him, I said, "Shep, I watch the Muppets. I think it's the funniest thing on TV." It was the #1 show in the world because there were no blacks and whites. They were green and purple and orange, you know. And the adult writing was so funny on it that it went way above kids' heads, you know. And
I think
I
it was a
said-
Halloween show, actually.
Yeah, it was a Halloween
Yeah.
show. And I said, Shep, we spent all this time developing Alice as a villain, and this is gonna just water Alice down so much. I said, who did the show recently? And he says, Christopher Lee, Vincent Price. I said, I'm in. I'm in, whatever it is, I'm in. Never had so much fun doing anything in my life as working for a week with the Muppets. Because it was when Jim Henson and Frank Oz and all the original guys were there in London. And you got to a point where the Muppets was like me talking to
Yeah,
Shep.
it was real.
I'd have Miss Piggy right here. And we're rehearsing, and you rehearse hard. And after a while, you know, I think that went very well. Yeah, I did too. Yeah, it was pretty good. You know. And I said, I think it would be funnier if you put your head on my shoulder on that one part. It would be really, really a soft moment like that. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. And you find yourself talking, you totally disregard the fact that it's a man's hand. Because Miss Piggy's reacting to every single thing you do. You know, oh, you have something on your pants. Oh, you know. And then Kermit comes over, and you know, and Kermit's going, so, getting along pretty well with Miss Piggy. I say, there's nothing going on, Kermit. You know, I said, you know, she's coming on to me. Okay, I mean, my wife is here. I would never do any. Miss Piggy is yours, you know. And they'd start arguing, and I'm in the middle, and I'm, you know. I said, Shep, I feel really awkward here about this whole thing. But you got so involved in the characters that you literally bought into it. And it was so refreshing to really act. They were so good at it
So good. Oh, man.
that you were working with other actors that just happened to be green and made of felt, you know. But it was the most fun thing we ever did. And to this day, I don't think there's anything that we ever did that I get constant reaction from. And every birthday, I still get a little figurine from the Muppets. And that was what, 1978, 70,
Maybe before,
79,
yeah.
something like that. So
Welcome to my
there,
life.
once you're in the Muppet family, you're there, you know.
I've been a fan since '77. First time I saw you was '82 in France, back in France. Saw you last May in Brussels. Fantastic. I was wondering.
Was that the Espace de Cardin in '82? No.
Cirque Royal. Oh no, '82 was in Lille, north of France. You know.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you to keep this energy. You know. I mean, what do you do differently? Diet or anything? Do you do anything special? Because we get it. I'm sorry, we're getting old, you know. I mean, you're getting old.
Well,
so I know I'm
we're
changing my
not.
diet. I'm doing many things. I'm doing many things for my health. So what do you do to keep strong and tour all over Europe and the world? I mean, what do you do that's different?
You know what? I'm 68 and never felt better in my life. I just finished 6 months on the road. We just did the Jimmy Kimmel show
This afternoon?
just today. And I figured out something about this business. Stress kills. Stress is a killer. Financial stress, romantic, marital, children, management, everything. I don't have any of those problems. Cheryl and I have been married 40 years. She's here somewhere. Cheryl is still in the show, and she's better now than she was when she was 18 in the show. She's funnier and better now. Our kids are great. We have no financial problems. We have a spiritual thing. Cheryl and I are both Christian, go to church every Sunday, the whole thing. And 2 grandsons now, twins, Falcon and Riot, their names are. And they're already, Falcon's got his legs apart with his guitar. He's doing that already. I'm going, oh yeah, I got that. You know, but stress kills. When you get to a position, I think that when you're navigating your way through the business, not very many people have Sheps. I've learned this from a lot of rock stars. They go, I have so many problems with finances. I have so many problems with getting my manager to do this and my agent to do that, and da-da-da-da. I have never had that stress. And so I think that's what makes me 22 years old now, is I've never had to deal with all that stress. Got rid of the alcohol, got rid of the drugs, got rid of that 35 years ago. That was a problem. That was a huge problem. It's the only time Shep wouldn't talk to me. It was at a point where he wouldn't be part of me killing myself. And I was, I fell into that, to the whole, I was in the Los Angeles blizzard, cocaine blizzard that went on, and never talked about it, but I was in it. And I still drank on top of that. So when I finally got to rock bottom, and, he put me in the hospital. It was a hard thing for him to do, him and my wife. And when I came out, okay, we're ready to go, But I wasn't going to put myself in the hospital. And certainly none of the Hollywood vampires were going to put me in the hospital because they were all in the same shape as I was. So it took somebody to do tough love and say, look, we're not going to watch you die. You're going. And, I woke up 2 days later in the hospital going, where am I? And I was mad for about an hour because I really realized I had to be there. I got up one morning and threw up blood. And that was like probably a good sign that I needed to be in the hospital. But the great thing was from that, it was not even an argument.
Yeah.
It was after I came out, I went, okay, where are we?
No, it was really wild.
We've
never really even talked about it.
No, I just called him up and I said, okay, where are we? What are we doing?
We had about maybe a year and a half where we didn't speak. I didn't see the shows. I went to Alice and I said, listen, I'm not going to work as hard as I work to make you money to kill yourself. You want to kill yourself? Go right ahead.
I don't want the blood on my hands.
And I just sort of backed out. And when he called this is the second time. The first time, Cheryl and I put him in the hospital. Second time, you got there on your own.
Yeah, went there.
And called up from the hospital, and he said, I'm in the hospital. I was blowing blood, but I'm good now. And I said, great, I'll be in Phoenix. And to this day, we've never, ever discussed that year and a half. He's never,
It happened, it's gone.
Gone.
So it was done.
It was never like, why didn't you, or, it's...
But the thing about it is it was emotional at the time, and at the same time, it was exactly the way that we work. I called him up and I said, okay, I'm done. What's next?
Right. And what was next was Monster Dog.
Yeah. I said to him, I've got to do something that I can prove that I can work sober.
Yeah.
Okay? What can we do? And he says, I got a movie for you in Spain, and it'll only be shown in the Philippines.
No, it was so great. It was a guy named Edward Sarlui, who was the popcorn king of South America, and he made 100 movies a year, all ridiculously low budget, horrible. None of them made sense.
Movies that I rent.
That Alice would like. So I went to him because I was in the movie business, and I said, I need something for Alice. I have this great movie, Monster Dog. Without dwelling on it, they dubbed Alice's voice.
Right.
With an Italian guy speaking English with the worst accent.
Everybody in the cast, if you've seen this gem of a movie, everybody in the cast was British or American. So everybody spoke perfect
English.
And it was, I actually played the Clint Eastwood guy. I was the guy, I had the hair and the whole thing, and I was the good guy until the end when I turns into this giant, stupid dog. And which I would have, if I bought that movie, I would have loved it. But the deal was I had to see if I could work sober. I mean, it's get up in the morning, 7 in the morning, get down there, get in makeup, and know your lines, because it was a lot of dialogue back and forth. So we finally finished the movie, and I went, okay, this is just horrible. It's gonna be great, Nobody's ever gonna see it. Great, And I get my copy of the movie, and I put it on, and the very first thing I'm sitting, I go, hey, what's going on in here? And I went, do I sound like that? And I realized that every single person in the movie talked like a Spanish truck driver. Yeah. And it was great. It's still one of my favorite things.
We went to see a rough cut of it, and his daughter had produced it. I don't know if you remember that. I don't know if you even came with me to see it, but I went to see a rough cut of it, and it was completely out of sync, which means, he'd be talking, but the words would... And I didn't know, I was sort of a movie maker, and I didn't know exactly what, and no one was saying anything in the movie. And the movie ended, and we get in the car, and they're talking about how great it is, and finally I said, did you notice that it was out of sync? And he said, oh, yeah, yeah, but it was very close.
So I have been in, when you used to go into Blockbusters, and they have a section called turkeys, I've been in 2 of them. Sergeant Pepper. I did that movie for one reason, because I got to work with the Beatles producer,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and the Bee Gees, and they said, you do get to beat up the Bee Gees. And I went, I'm in, you know. But, you know, to work with him, and when we did the song I had to do, Because, which is a great John Lennon song, and, you know, there I am, and there was the guys, and I sing it, and I did a pretty good John Lennon impersonation. He said, oh, that's good, you know. He said, but how would Alice do this song? I went, oh, okay. And so I did this I turned this beautiful song into this threat. And he played it for John. He said, John loves it, it's great, it's really good. So, but the only reason I did that was, you know, so I could be, and I mean, Steve Martin.
It was an amazing cast.
George Burns. I mean, everybody was in this movie, and it was just awful. It was just one of those great, awful movies. First of all, it was the worst idea in the world. Take the greatest album of all time that pretty much signifies who the Beatles were, and put the Bee Gees doing it. And I went, well,
They both started with bees. So.
You know.
He closed the doors, exactly.
Yeah. But at the time, it was fun to do.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Great.
Shep, great book. Thank you.
Thank you.
One segment I want to ask you about, Anne Murray, the photograph with the Hollywood vampires. Did you discuss that with these guys ahead of time, or did you just go to the Rainbow cold? And what was that like?
Basically, I went to the Rainbow. I got down on my knees with the thing to threaten the candle. I was their driver. I was sort of the only one sober enough to drive. So I used to drive them home from the whiskey or from the Rainbow. I had this big Cadillac limousine, 54
1954.
Cadillac limousine.
Wish we still had that good car.
Which broke down on Santa Monica. I was driving with Neil Smith, and we left it. I still have never seen it again.
Took it out and shot it.
But I went over, you know, I was sort of, I wanted to see if I had some management skills. So I took the act that was the furthest from Alice, which was Anne Murray, and about as far as you could get. And one of the things with Alice that we always talked about, we called it guilt by association, which was putting Alice next to somebody famous and having that fame bleed off. The Salvador Dali's, you know, if you think of Alice's career, George Burns, always in photos with icons. So I wanted to do the same thing for Anne Murray and see if that kind of thing worked. And Alice had this drinking group, the Hollywood Vampires, that met up at the Rainbow.
The Rainbow.
And this particular night, Harry Nilsson was there, John Lennon,
Mickey Dolenz.
Mickey Dolenz, and Alice were there. And I went over and I said, guys, I really need help. I got this really boring girl from Canada who is the greatest singer in the world, but was, you know, a whole different thing. And if you guys would come and just take a picture with you, you don't have to watch or show you, it would be the greatest thing. If you don't, I'm never driving you ever again anywhere. And we went for like 3 minutes.
For 3 minutes.
Went in, everybody was so drunk. You guys were so drunk.
Oh,
that
it
night.
was.
Oh my! I don't think he even knew you were there.
But it was painful. Shep.
It was, yeah.
Snowbird. And John's looking at me like this, and I went. So the next day, they question her, and they say, "What was it like having, you know, wow, look at this picture. You had John Lennon, and, you know, Harry Nilsson and Alice, and she says, "Oh yeah, they showed up." And my phone was melting. You know, hi, hello, yeah. Did you happen to see the paper today? Because I mean, she dissed us all. You know, and first that was the wrong people to call, because normally John and Harry would get thrown out of the, you know, the what was it, Troubadour or whatever it was. For, you know, they did that with the Smothers Brothers. They got thrown out and everything like that, because they'd get drunk and they would start just hassling everybody, you know. And they didn't do it that night. I was going, that was the night you should have done it.
Okay, back here.
Good evening, Shep and Els. Happy Halloween. Thank you for being here tonight. And my question is, Bob Ezrin, who worked with Pink Floyd, did he get the idea for concept albums from you, Alice, and then bring that to Pink Floyd? And a follow-up to that is, do you think in future tours you'll be doing full album shows?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you something about the Pink Floyd. When we first, any band from any little city in Arizona that gets to LA and then survives LA and then actually gets to the whiskey, and your name is up there, and you finally look at your name up there, and it goes, Alice Cooper and who's Led Zeppelin? Because they were a new band that nobody had ever heard of, and we shared the bill with them. The very next night, we go to the Cheetah Club, Alice Cooper and some guy named Pink Floyd. You know, he wears all pink, I guess his name. He's Floyd the Barber, I guess, from, you know. And we became the closest friends because the two bands were very experimental bands. Syd Barrett was just as experimental as you could get. We were doing the same kind of insanity. We really melded together as friends. They ran out of money and ended up living with us. So the idea that Bob Ezrin later on did Schools Out with the kids singing and everything like that, and then Another Brick in the Wall, there's the kids singing again, same story,
Same song.
basically same message, and you take the two songs and they go like this. So when we do Schools Out now, at the very end of it, you know, we go right into we don't need no education, dun, 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 dun. They fit perfectly. Well, because Bob Ezrin produced them, and they do connect up. But Pink Floyd were, just one good story to give you an idea about Syd Barrett. I'd come in, you know, when bands are living together, you kind of like just are surviving. I come into the kitchen, and Syd Barrett has been there all night. And he's got these purple velvet pants on, and he's this British rock star. And there's a box of cornflakes in front of him. And he's going, oh. And I'm going, what is he laughing about? You know, apparently the cornflakes were dancing, you know, singing and this, you know, because he was always on acid, and he was always, you know, and he was schizo. Nobody really knew at that point how schizo he was. And he was having the best time of his life just watching that, you know, that box of cornflakes. I didn't want to bother him. I went and turned the TV on. I said, well, if you saw that, you'd love TV, you know, because TV actually something. But we were very good friends, and it really was an interesting thing that those two songs did meld together like that. And to this day, I mean, Floyd were, you know, all the guys, we were always really, really, really tight with those guys. And the Doors were the other band that we were really tight with. They were the guys that sort of took us under their wing when we first came into LA. And kind of they saw something in us that they kind of liked, you know, that was different. But as far as doing an album, you know, like you're talking, I know bands come in and they'll do the entire, Neil Young will do his full album, or REM will do whatever they're doing. I've always thought about that. I've always thought that'd be a great idea to go to Vegas and do a different album every night, you know. But that would be a lot of rehearsal.
A lot of rehearsal.
But this band I have now could do it easily. Back then, I don't think we could have done it. Well, when we did Nightmare, it was the full album. I mean, it was from beginning to end, it was the entire album in order. And pretty much all of our albums could do that because we did write them in order so that the storyline did work all the way through. And that was all the way through Constrictor and Last Temptation, everything from the inside. Were always written as stories. But you could take any one of those and produce them as a production, as a, you know, stage production.
So 2 more questions.
This guy's had his hand up forever.
So I am a waitress at the Rainbow.
What's that?
Okay. I'm a waitress at the Rainbow, but I am also an aspiring artist manager. And a lot of bands who just are very influenced by you guys, by so many great bands, They're lucky if they're playing to 400 people. So my question for you both is, what do you think the future is for rock and roll, especially arena rock? And what would an aspiring manager need to do to really help kind of bring rock and roll back to arenas?
Boy, I'll
I
tell
have
you.
no idea.
I do believe things go in cycles. I believe things go in cycles, and I think rock and roll. There's probably kids in a garage right now learning Guns N' Roses songs and Aerosmith songs and Alice songs. Good. We were in that golden age when bands got to be bands, and they got to write their own material, and they got to be themselves. Win or lose, it was them. It was who it was. I don't get it right now. I don't understand why a band that's in their 20s, young 20s, have totally forgotten how to be outlaws. They've forgotten what rock and roll was about. They've forgotten attitude. They've forgotten swagger. They've forgotten, when you're on stage, man, that's it. You gotta sell it once you're up there. I see bands that, the environment is bad, and I don't like oil. Okay, is that okay? And meat isn't good either. And I always tell them, write about your girlfriend. Every hit record is about somebody's girlfriend, or about your boyfriend, or about whatever. I said, but nobody cares about the environment when it comes to swagger rock and roll. No, wait. When's the last Rolling Stones record about the environment? I'm saying there are bands that do that, and that's great, and I applaud them. I applaud bands. When you take U2 and you take Sting and you take Bruce Springsteen and guys that do, I don't consider them political. I consider them humanitarian, and I'm all for that. And anytime you're trying to help people, you're a humanitarian. That's not political. But it's boring. I'm sorry. I want to hear about your girlfriend. Every hit record, every Beatle record, every Stones record, every Who record, is about how she jilted you, or she's so cool, or she isn't so cool, or she broke my heart, or this. That's what rock and roll's about. And you got to be able to know how to shake your ass on stage. Come on. You can't just get up there and just... And I need to fit in. You don't need to fit in. If you're a rock and roll band, please don't fit in. There's a band called the Struts, great band, good band. The Stripes from Ireland, great band. These bands have got the idea, that you've got to get up there and be rock stars. If you're going to be a rock star, own it. Don't just get up there and waste my time. If I walk in and see a band just playing stuff, I say, great musicians, great players, but it's not rock and roll. It has no, you don't play guitar up here, you play it down here. You play it from your crotch, not from up here.
And our final question for the evening.
Hi, my name is Peter, and I've read your book, They Call Me Supermensch, twice now. I'm on my second run here, and one of my favorite scenes...
You got a lot of time on your hands.
Oh, yeah, a lot of it. But one of my favorite scenes is the Groucho Marx one with Alice Cooper. Just that, put a lot of color on the walls with those, and I really enjoyed the book for that. But my question had to do a little bit with you talked about the most important part being able to accept each other's mistakes. And it seems like you guys have a lot of certainty within each other. And it seems almost unfounded in the book, but it's very strong. So what is that secret? Because I work with my brother a lot, and we kind of have that, but I'm not sure exactly how to explain it. What's the best way you think you can explain that for you two?
For me, I don't know if I can explain it. It's just the way it's been for us. I think in our relationship, not having a contract allowed us to be humans with each other. I think one of the real problems with an artist and a manager having a contract is that they immediately are adversaries. You're negotiating against each other, and that sets a tone. So I think for us, it just was it's the way we deal with the world and our business.
Yeah.
It's who we are.
I don't think I've ever asked Shep anything about business at all. I told him a long time ago, I said...
And I've never asked to sleep with a snake. ever.
Yes, you did.
No, maybe once.
No, but the thing about it was if an artist, I hear young bands arguing with each other about what percentage they're getting of the T-shirts for 400 people in the audience, and I'm going, what are you worried about that for? I said, worry about who's playing
Writing
the
a hit
solo,
song,
write a great song. You should never, bands should never have to worry about the finances. Bands, I don't know how much we make a show to this day. I don't know how much we make on a tour. At the end of the tour, the accountant tells me, and I go, great. It's that simple. Great, good. I never once say, hey, Shep, well, what is all this? And what's all? If I have to do that, then why am I with him? Oh, it's, that's why I say.
I mean, that happens in life in all relationships. That's what I mean.
think in any business.
That's what I'm saying. It's the way we approach life.
It was a marriage made in
Something.
Los Angeles.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.